You know, you could only avoid the shakiness of life so long until the wheels come off. Back when I was in college, I went to James Madison University, and it was an 8-hour drive from James Madison University in Harrisonburg, Virginia, back home to my hometown, Farmington, Connecticut. And freshman year, I didn't have a car on campus, and that would have been kind of a lot of driving for my parents to come pick me up for Christmas break. So for Christmas break, I found someone else who lived in Connecticut who was carpooling with a bunch of people back up north, and they could have dropped me off at a nice stop on the highway, and my parents could come pick me up there. Perfect. So we all crammed into the car, all 5 of us, in kind of this old beat-up college student's car, and started driving north on Interstate 81. And after about 45 minutes, the driver, whose car it was, started saying, you know, the car kind of feels funny. It's kind of vibrating. And we're like, all the guys are sitting in the back. We gave the ladies the front seats. And we're like, it's fine. There's a lot of weight in the car. We're good. Just keep on going. Don't stop. And then a little farther, we all started kind of feeling a little bit of a shake in the car. And she's like, I really think I should pull over. And all the guys in the back are like, nah, it's fine. We just got there's a lot of bags in the trunk. We're good. Like, we don't want to stop. We got 8, 9, however long, many hours to get home. We just got to keep going. It'll be fine. You can always get it checked out when you get home. Well, after a while, the driver was sweating. She was getting a little anxious about the way the car was starting to really shake. And so the lady on the passenger side of the car rolled down the window, and like a puppy dog sticking its head out the window, she went, whoop, and looked out the side of the car and pulled her head back in and said, pull over the car. The tire's about to fly off. And we pulled over the car, and we got out and we looked. And 3 of the 5 lug nuts were gone. And one of the last 2 bolts there was halfway chewed up and was about to break off. If we had kept on driving, that wheel would have flown off in the middle of Interstate 81, and we would not have been getting home for Christmas. And neither would probably some other drivers on the road. I'm glad we stopped. I share that this morning, not to just say that sometimes us guys don't know as much about cars as we think we do, but also that when life gets shaky, we can't ignore that issue or the problem or whatever hurt we're facing, because if we do, eventually we'll find ourselves in a further crisis. The wheels will come off life, or our spiritual life, or our faith. And I bring that up now and wanted to do a sermon on this right now, because I know there's a lot of people that have been hurting. It has been a tough season for our country. It's been a tough season for our community. It's been a tough season for a lot of people here at Pine Grove Church. We've lost a lot of people for all sorts of reasons. There's a lot of people mourning and grieving in this season. All of us have just kind of felt the oppression of the last couple years on our lives, and we've talked a lot about being anxious and angry about the world around us. And some of us are we're just tired. We're tired of the state of the world around us. We're worn out. We start saying, Lord, how long is this going to keep going on? And so we don't want to ignore that issue. We don't want to ignore our grief. We don't want to ignore our anger or our anxiety. We don't want to ignore, maybe if it's just that, Lord, I am worn out. We don't want to ignore that. We want to know, what is the healthy way to process these things, to go to the Lord for help? What is the healthy way to do that, so that we don't find ourselves with the wheels flying off the car of our life? So this morning, we are going to talk about the art of lamentation, because the Bible does have a paradigm to deal with the various issues that we face in life, a way to go to God with our problems, to process those things in a healthy way that leads us to trust God more, to maybe experience peace, or even, at the end of it, joy. We're going to do that by reading Psalm 13, even though there's 40 or 50, depending on who you talk to. Psalms of Lamentation, we're going to be focusing on that one and moving through its kind of process through lamenting before God. And it breaks down very easily. There's kind of like 3 movements to this process in this psalm and many of the other psalms of lament. And that's how we're going to move. We're going to kind of go through each piece of the process on its own. And by the end, we're going to see how it all fits together, a healthy way of processing the difficulties of life. All right, Psalm 13 is a psalm of David. I'm going to begin reading here in verse 1, chapter 13. It says, "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me?" That's how the psalm starts. Then that's the first section. David brings his complaint before God, and it is filled with emotion. I've seen various articles online over the years talking about how sometimes our current music and culture is over-emotional. Have you read the Psalms? David is an emotional guy. Some people feel like he's kind of he's sad one moment and exalted the next. The Psalms is filled with emotion, and David here makes an emotional plea to the Lord based on his situation. Now, we don't know what David's exact situation is here. He talks about his enemies here and in the rest of the psalm, but it's not tied to any individual moment in his life. Maybe it was when he was on the run from Saul. Maybe it was when he was in a difficult season of battle. It doesn't say exactly, but his plea here might sound strange or even offensive to us. Look what he says. He says, "How long will my enemies be exalted over me?" Is he accusing God of helping David's enemies? David, the anointed king. David, a man after God's own heart. And look at the beginning. "How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever?" Is David accusing God of abandoning him? And you know, this is the only place where we see psalmists be very transparent about their feelings as they are praying to God in these songs. The Psalms are songs that God's people are to sing. We see similar things in other places. Psalm 22, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Or Psalm 88, where the psalmist there actually accuses God of not only abandoning him, but even being his enemy. These things are in the Bible. They are. Now, is David saying that God actually abandoned him in Psalm 13? Or is he saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Has God actually abandoned him in Psalm 22? No. He isn't saying God has actually abandoned him. In fact, the entire point of Psalm 22, for example, is that God has not abandoned David, will never abandon David, and will not abandon his anointed one. In fact, it says later in the psalm, he shall not turn his face from him. The Lord will not turn his face from those he has anointed, from those who he has chosen from his people. So what's going on here in Psalm 13 with this wild and crazy opening that if Bruce Williams had opened up his prayer like that, you'd have been like, that's it, he's done being an elder. What's happening here? David isn't saying God's abandoned him, but he's saying he feels like God's abandoned him. The life has him so down, he feels like, where are you, God, in all my misery and all my suffering? Where are you? And he's expressing this emotional plea and emotional complaint to God. And you know what? That's okay. As I said, it's like 40, 50. It depends on how you count based on which scholar you are reading. There are a lot of psalms of lament in the Bible. In fact, we have a whole book called the Book of Lamentation, right? Lamentations, which is one long lament of the people of Israel. It is okay to not be okay. It is okay to cry out honestly with God, not pretending that everything is okay, not pretending at the start of your prayer that everything is good, or if we have questions, or if doubts start leaking into our mind during a season of difficulty, that we just go to God with even those doubts. Now, I'm not saying you go and yell at God all the time and be blasphemous towards the Lord, but we can be honest. He is big enough and strong enough. God is secure enough in his almighty power to shape the entire universe that we can bring us in our struggles, our honesty to him. And in fact, Hebrews chapter 4 tells us that we can approach the throne of God boldly because we have forgiveness in Christ. Even in our weakness, we could draw with confidence towards the throne of God. It says in Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16. And that God isn't surprised by the things that we are struggling with and the things that we are tempted by. It says in a couple verses before that Jesus was subject to every temptation and struggle and pain that comes from human life. So God isn't going to be surprised. He knows our hearts. We might as well be honest to him in prayer and not ignore our feelings or try to put them in a box, not ignore our sufferings and pretending things to be okay, that when we are hurting, we say, Lord, we are hurting. Because he knows. We might as well start by being honest in our prayers. I think a lot of times we have a hard time doing this. We have trouble doing it with each other, really saying how things are going. I think we have trouble sometimes doing it with God too. I think there's a bunch of reasons. One reason is we're really focused on productivity and our image, that sometimes we don't want to really process these difficult emotional struggles with the Lord. We say things, we either think that we need to be productive all the time. Well, it's not productive for me to bring this complaint before the Lord, so I'm just going to ignore my complaint and just kind of go on with life. I got things to do. I got places to be. I'm not going to actually process this out. Or we're used to just this image of Christians that look like they have it all together, whether they do or not. We can't judge anyone on the outside, but by what's happening on the inside of their heart. So sometimes because we're obsessed with productivity and sometimes image, we don't go to God with our complaints the way we should. Sometimes we just want to deny our problems. We want to pretend they don't exist because we don't want to deal with them. So we don't cry out to the Lord with what is bothering us. We try to stuff it down. Maybe if I could just hide it here in this so I got a little space here. Okay, it's there. Just going to leave it there in that box. But over time, that thing's going to build up. And just like me trying to ignore the car shake during my ride home from college, the problem's not going to go away. Like, I didn't want to stop and have a problem with the car and delay my ride home from college during that opening story. And I wanted the car not to be broken. Well, at some point, I had to get out of the car and check that the lug nuts were falling off, right? So we don't want to deny the problem because we don't want to have to deal with it. And then the last thing that sometimes we do is sometimes we just have some wrong images about who God our Father is. You know, none of the relationships we have on earth are perfect. None of us have perfect parents or friends or relationships with anyone because humans are not perfect. And sometimes we take the imperfections of our human relationships and accidentally, unintentionally kind of place them on God. I've seen this so often when I've talked with men in either discipleship relationships or at men's groups or men's retreats. And men who struggle to just be honest and go to God their Father with their issues and problems and struggles and cry out in that way because their father would get angry when they would bring a problem to their father. Or I remember working with one young man whose father left when he was really young. And so he expected God to abandon him if he brought all his problems at the feet of Jesus. And that's a hard thing to get over. I'm not blaming that young man. He had to kind of work through that and figure out that the perfect Heavenly Father is more perfect than even the best fathers on the planet. That our perfect Heavenly Father is a better friend than our best friends on earth. We don't want to apply human relationships to the way we view God, who wants us to go to him, who sent his Son to die in our place so that we would have access to him, so that we could go for him and say, Lord, how long will I have to endure this? How long am I going to feel this pain? Lord, I feel like you're far from me. And when we say that and are honest and open, then we can move on to actually engaging with the Lord and growing our trust in him and working through our grieving process, or as we're talking about today, our lamenting process before God and actually build our trust with him. Now, we can't stay in the spot that David is here in the beginning of the psalm. And in fact, no psalm of lament stays, even not all of them end as happy as this one, but even none of them kind of stay in this place. And it would be unhealthy for us to stay in this place of just only crying out with our complaint, which is, again, that first phase in kind of the lamenting cycle. It would be unhealthy for us to do that. Because over time, if we just kind of stayed in that spot of just anxious or anger or crying out, then we find bitterness start to develop in us. Either bitterness about God, bitterness about our life situation, or just bitterness in our interpersonal relationships. You know, I heard a great story about this professor. It was the first day of class on a new topic in a psychology class. And all students came in, and he had he had drunk a half a glass of water, and was sitting on the desk in the front of the classroom. And he asked the class, how much do you think this glass of water weighs? And the class is like, what? This is psychology. What do you? And so a couple ounces, this, that. They all gave out there. He's like, all right, can any of you come and pick up this glass of water? And they're like, yeah. And so he's like, all right, you. And he had one of the students come up and pick up the glass of water. He says, all right, hold on to that for a second. I want to tell the class something. And he says to the class, this student made a huge mistake. I asked him how much the glass weighed, and I asked him if he could lift it up, but he never asked how long he would have to hold it. So that student might be able to hold that water for 5 minutes. After about 15 minutes, things start cramping up. An hour, a day, eventually that student's going to pass out on the ground or is going to lose all feeling in their arm. It's not about how heavy something is. It's about how long we hold onto it. And so if we never keep on moving through the lamenting process, if we just stay in this shouting out our pain to God and don't actually continue along the road, we end up in real trouble, holding on to a glass of water too long, only increasing our pain and maybe even creating bitterness. And so David moves on in the psalm to the next phase, which is beyond the crying out or the bringing of a complaint to actually asking God for help. We could just call this second phase, it could be your second point, is just prayer. He prays before God. It says, we're in verse 3 now, after he said, how long, he says 4 times. And then in verse 3, consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Boy, that is a big statement. We could just breeze over that, but he just, remember, in verses 1 and 2, complained to God, God, will you forget me forever? Lord, are you even here? Have you exalted my enemies above me? But look what he calls him, the Lord my God. It is a statement in faith that the Lord is actually on his side. And we see David's already made a turn from just crying out and asking difficult questions to God to now asking for actual help, because overall, he does trust God, even if in that moment he is feeling strong emotions or doubt or pain. So he says, consider and answer me, O Lord my God. Light up my eyes, lest I sleep the sleep of death. And this is a really interesting, because there's a lot of metaphor and imagery involved in that little statement there. I think David's actually worried about his death. He talks about his enemies. We know David fought a lot of battles. We know David was on the run a lot. David had a much more violent life than we have today. So I think he means it both literally and figuratively. But figuratively, he talks about lighting up his eyes lest I sleep the sleep of death. The death in the culture of the Israelites was seen as literally a place kind of under the world in darkness. The darkness was both separation from God. Death was both separation from God and dark. And so when he says, light up my eyes, he's saying, breathe life back into me, Lord, lest I go into death. But also, Lord, open my eyes that I may see that you are there for me. That I am not being separated from you, Lord, in death. I am still with you. You are still for me. Light up my eyes that I might see that. A lot of imagery wrapped up in there. He says in verse 4, lest my enemy say, I have prevailed over him, lest my foes rejoice because I am shaken. He's saying, God, please hear my prayer here to help me so that my enemies don't think they've won here. Because I know ultimately, the Lord, my God, that you are for me. That is what David is saying. And so we moved on to our next phase in the lament, which is to pray, to simply pray before God, to go to him and ask for help for our every struggle, for our every problem, to move beyond the crying out and to say, Lord, I need help with my grief. Lord, I need help with this financial struggle I have. Lord, will you help give me wisdom on this big decision I need to make? Lord, will you just help me not be obsessed by the news and seeing it all day and just getting angry and anxious about it? Whatever it is, that we go to God and ask him directly for help. Sometimes I think we feel like we're bothering God or something. Look, I don't want to go from these. I pray for all the little things in life and the big things. God desires for us to go to him in prayer. Again, Jesus died on the cross for our sins and was raised from the dead, so we have access to our Heavenly Father to bring our prayers to him. And we want to be praying to God and asking for things because not only does God move when God's people together come to him in prayer, but it also builds our trust and our strength of our relationship with God when we go to him in prayer. When my kids were little in particular, a lot of times when they would come up to me in the house, I would know what they were going to ask me before they were going to ask it. Either they already asked mommy, and mommy said, go ask your father, or I just knew what time it was, or I just knew, right? They're little, their requests were simple back then, right? And every time they'd come up to me, I would sit and I would let them ask. As they kind of, they're little, they're trying to figure out how to ask. They don't have the vocabulary. But I wanted them to ask me. Even though I already knew, I was going to say yes. And I knew what they were going to ask. I wanted them to come and ask me because it built a joy and a closeness for us. I wanted them to ask so I could say yes and do that thing together. I didn't understand why I was doing it for a while. And I was thinking about it, and that's really why. I wanted to enjoy them asking and me saying yes. And so going to the Lord in prayer, asking him for all the big and little things in our life is important. Yes, God knows all our problems, but we should spend the time asking him. Every moment in prayer, asking God for help for ourselves and other is time well spent, because not only does God move when his people come to him in prayer, but our relationship and our trust in God grows through that process. That's the second phase of the lament process, to cry out to God honestly with our complaint and our problems and our struggles. Then to bring prayer before him, asking for his help in specific ways. And then finally, third, we move on to a third phase, which is actually joy. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. Verse 5. But I have trusted in your steadfast love. My heart shall rejoice in your salvation. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. And that last line is so important. I was reading the Treasury of David, Spurgeon's commentary on the Psalms. And he made the observation that the last line of this psalm negates the first line of the psalm. Read the last line again. I will sing to the Lord because he has dealt bountifully with me. Go back to verse 1. How long, O Lord, will you forget me forever? Those are opposite places. David has worked through a process. He's made a big change through the course of this psalm from, O Lord, why have you forgotten me? To, Lord, you have dealt bountifully with me. I rejoice. The end result of lamenting well with God, with coming to him with our honest complaint, with then asking him for help and prayer, is a growth in our trust so that at the end we experience sometimes joy. We experience sometimes a peace that is beyond all human understanding, that we find a place of being okay with our struggles and our problems if we have processed it well with God, if we haven't ignored the beginning half of this process. Have you ever felt that joy at a time where it made more sense? Have you felt a sense of peace that you couldn't explain even though everything else was crazy around you? I know I have at one time or another, and able to say after this process that it is well. That whatever is happening, the good, the bad, the ugly, I know God is in control of my situation. I know He is for me, and even though I am hurting, He is there leading me, giving me strength, giving me peace day by day. Now, some of you may be asking, well, Shane, shouldn't we always be in this place of joy? I mean, after all, the New Testament tells us in a bunch of places to rejoice always, doesn't it? I think Philippians, actually it says it all the time in Philippians. It's like the main kind of thing in Philippians is rejoice. Specifically in Philippians chapter 4, verse 4, he says, rejoice in the Lord always. I say it again, rejoice. Or James chapter 1, count it all joy, brothers, when you face trials of various kinds. For the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Count it joy when you face these trials. So is the New Testament command here to rejoice and to find joy in the Lord conflicting with what we're reading in the Psalms? And I say no. I say they're at the end of the process already. Like lamentation and lamenting would not have been something new to the original readers of the New Testament in most cases, and certainly not to the writers of the New Testament. Yeah, rejoice always after moving through this process, after running to the Lord. There is no reason for us to pretend to have joy at the beginning. There's no reason for it. If we work through the lamenting process, we might end in joy at the end, but we don't have to start there. In fact, I was talking to a counselor friend of mine, and she called this idea, both in Christianity and outside, as toxic positivity. That sometimes we feel the need to be positive all the time, that we can't actually address the actual problems we are facing. And if we try to rejoice all the time in every circumstance and ignore our problems, we don't end up actually feeling any joy at all. And it robs us of our joy. Yet if we walk through the journey that David has been on here, the crying out to God and the going to Him in prayer, then we end in a place of joy and peace and hope, despite whatever circumstances that we are facing. God is faithful to walk us through our greatest triumphs in life and our greatest difficulties in life. He is there for us. A couple maybe I'd call them tips as we wrap up here. One is that the process isn't always as simple or as quick as David makes it out here. I picked Psalm 13 because it was a nice, brief psalm. You could read some of the other Psalms of Lament that I mentioned, like 22 or 88 or 3 that we read to start the morning. And sometimes the process is a little more complicated. Sometimes that process of lament, you know, if you sit down for 5 minutes, okay, I cried out to the Lord and I prayed to Him, where's my joy? Sometimes it's a little bit more of a bumpy road than that. That's okay. The process isn't bad. It's just life is much messier than the simple psalm that I chose here this morning. So don't abandon hope if you don't immediately feel the joy of God. This is a process we go through. And sometimes we go back to lamenting, and then we feel better again. And I mean, grief is that way a lot, right? There's good days in grief, and there's bad days in grief. It's not just one steady upward rise of healing. It's up and down. But overall, the Lord is guiding and leading us through all of our days. Another thing we want to understand is that people express themselves differently in this process, and that is also okay. We shouldn't look on someone in the way they're either grieving or struggling with someone and assume what is happening in their heart. Assume that because someone on the outside has it all together, that they're doing fine. They might not be doing fine, and that's okay too, but we can't necessarily judge where a person is in that process from the outside. And so we shouldn't try to. We should allow them to be wherever they are at, not assume someone is doing really well or doing really poorly because we are just seeing them at a different point in this process. Sometimes the person who is wailing and sobbing is the person who's in a better place than the person who's being strong and silent because they have to do their grieving in a different place or a different time. And the last thing I'd say is that lamentation is not something that has to be done alone. This isn't something that you need to do just only in your own private time with the Lord. It's okay to let others know what you are going through and sharing that, you know what, I'm not okay this week. I'm not okay. You know, there's some people I say, hey, how you doing? That's kind of like my standard greeting to people. And most people will be like, I'm good. Like, no matter what, and that's okay. It's our standard greeting. That's okay to say okay, you know, in that situation. But there's always a couple people out there who are like, oh, I wish you hadn't asked me that. I'm always honest when people ask me, and I'm not doing real well this week. I'm like, that's okay too. You know, thank you for telling me you were not okay. That's fine. Let me pray with you. And I think this is important too, that, you know, there's a time to cheer someone up and a time to help someone feel better. But sometimes it's okay just to stand with someone in their lamenting, to weep with someone who is weeping, to hurt along with someone who is hurting. We don't always have to try to fix their state. You know, we say this to kids a lot, and they're like, I'm sad. And we're like, oh, don't be sad. And, you know, that's okay as parents. We want to cheer up our kids. But sometimes with each other, we just want to spend that time with someone and not try to fix their situation and just lament alongside with them and pray for them and pray that God would minister to their hearts and see God as he helps us heal, he helps us find joy, as he helps us find peace in whatever our circumstances are. To help with this, I printed something in our bulletin this week. You'll see a handout that is Psalm 23. I do hope you read the Psalms of Lament, but after the Psalm of Lament, after you walk through the lamenting process of crying out to God and bringing your prayers before him, and then maybe experiencing some of that joy or trust or peace or whatever it is, then Psalm 23 is the place to go. It talks about the Lord being our shepherd. And I actually included both the ESV, which is the translation we use here and preach from and teach from and all the things we do at Pine Grove. But also, I know some of you learned it in the King James Version, so we included that as well, because there's no reason to learn a new version if you have that memorized. And I would spend some time in this week. Because when we really believe Psalm 23 about the Lord being our shepherd, that he is with us always, do we have the confidence to go to God and before God and lament well? Because this talks about the trustworthiness of God in all our situations. So, hey, spend a little time this week. See if you could memorize this. And actually, it's going to play a part in next week's service as well. So I wanted to give you that to help you through this process. But if we learn nothing else from Psalm 13, it is that God is with us. When we are feeling strong and our trust and our faith are growing, and when we're rattled with doubt and things are difficult and we're in a bad place, he is there always and will walk us through this process of learning to trust in him in our darkest seasons. And one thing is certain, as we read all the pages of Scripture, Psalms of Lament or not, that he is with us. He will never leave us nor forsake us. He is faithful, as David says, in his steadfast love to walk us through every season of life. And so we should go to him in our time of need. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you that we can rely on you for all things. That, Lord, in our times of greatest difficulty and times of greatest strength, you are unchanging. Your steadfast love doesn't change. That, Lord, if we have trusted in Jesus Christ, that you give us a hope that goes beyond all human understanding. And so I pray, Lord, for those who do not know you, that they would come to trust in you, that they would ask the questions that would lead to understanding who you are and what you've done for them through Jesus Christ, that they might be able to experience the kind of healing that the believer Jesus is able to heal as they move through their lamenting process. Lord, I pray for those who are grieving and mourning, that you would help them grieve and mourn well. For those who are rattled with anxiety or anger, that you would help them process that and lead them through that, Lord. But we would be a people. Make us into a people who come to you in all situations, that our trust is constantly growing in you as we move through the victories and the struggles of life and rely on your steadfast love for us. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. I want to say one thing about our closing psalm that Jaden is going to, our closing song that we're going to be singing. We're going to sing It Is Well, correct? Okay.
Correct.
Written by Horatio Spafford. Many of you know the story behind this. It was written after he lost his daughters. And let's not be mistaken. Horatio went through some bad days. He didn't start at "It is well." He ended with "It is well." I'm sure he cried out to the Lord and prayed to him. And so as we sing this last song, we are at the end of the lamenting cycle and are able to say as a people trusting in the Lord to lead us, "It is well with my soul."